So this record is Groundation by Count Ossie and the Mystic Revelation of Rastafari, which was released at the end of 1973, which is when I first bought it. Count Ossie had a camp up in the hills outside Kingston where they would have meetings. So he kind of developed this style of drumming, and he had a troupe of drummers and they would add musicians, bass, horns, etc. And Groundation is the name of the meeting. They would get together and play music and reason, discuss life, etc. So this particular album came about because Count Ossie kind of merged forces with Cedric Brooks, who's a very famous Jamaican. And his group was called Mystic Revelation. If we can open the inside, you can see the group. Can you see this? Playing on the beach. So this is pretty much the lineup that's on the album. There's also poetry, songs, some really fantastic music. There's a lot of sort of jazz in this album as well. There's a version of a Charles Lloyd tune and a version of the Crusaders' famous Way Back Home. And the horns are very, very jazzy. This is also the first album I got that had double bass on it. Before then it was all electric bass. The kind of music that's on here is similar to ritual music throughout the world, where they're playing the music for a higher purpose than entertainment. It's a very important album for me. Just been reissued by Dub Store Records. I first started playing saxophone in 1979. I had 2 or 3 jazz records before then, but when I got the horn and started to get into jazz, this is one of the first ones that I bought, so this would be 79 or 80, something like that. To have a double album of an hour or more was very rare because it's difficult to sustain the quality, both to present it and make it work as an album, but also to record it. And this was all recorded in one day, recorded on stormy Mondays, it says in the liner notes. And all the writing, they're all original songs, and the quality of the writing and the playing is very, very high. The very first jazz gig I did, which would have been about 5 years after I bought this, something like that, 5 or 6 years. The very first song of the first set was a song of this album. It's a really beautiful album. It's very powerful, very spiritual, as you might say, but it's not overplayed. It has a subtle intensity, let's say. So this album is John Coltrane, Afro Blue Impressions. This is one of the very first John Coltrane albums I bought. The first one was Blue Train. This is a double album again, but this is recorded live in Europe in 1963. And this is his classic, what they call the classic quartet, with Elvin Jones on drums, Jimmy Garrison on bass and McCoy Tyner on piano. This is when the band had been together for 2 or 3 years and we really had defined their sound. And he plays some classics on it. He plays Naima, Afro Blue, and My Favourite Things. And this version of My Favourite Things on here is my all-time favourite version. He used to play it on practically every gig, if not every gig. I've certainly must have about 30 recordings of it. But this is my favourite one. It's more up-tempo than the studio one, the original one. And the band is really, they found a zone that they're in. And it's just incredible from start to finish. And Coltrane plays 2 long solos on it. And his first one has some really beautiful phrases in that I've not heard him play on other versions. And it's incredibly lyrical. But the whole band is just really, on fire, as you would say nowadays. And it must have been absolutely incredible to be there and listen to it. So here we have another John Coltrane album. This one's Stellar Regions, and this is one of the albums that he recorded. It's in the last year of his life, 1967, but this wasn't released. In fact, it wasn't even discovered until I think about 1993, something like that. One of the tracks had been released on the album, was released just after his passing on Expression, but otherwise all the tracks were unheard, and it's a very, very strong album. All the tracks are out of tempo, there's no songs that are in time, there's no bass lines. But they're all very, very varied. The writing is very different, the approaches to melody and the way they explore the songs, break them apart, very, very different on each track, so each track still retains a very strong identity. I really love the group that he had, this group, the quartet, plus Pharoah Sanders, and all the music that they did. But this one, just the quartet, seems to be a little more cohesive. Well, this was recorded at Rudy Van Gelder's studio, of course, like a lot of Coltrane's music when he was on the Prestige label in the 50s and then when he moved to Impulse. And he did an incredible job. I think they sound very natural and very, very live. But all the sound spills into all the other microphones and it can be very difficult to keep a nice balance and clarity of each individual instrument. But he was the master of that. This is the first dub music that I heard. The Message, Dubwise by Prince Buster All-Stars, a collective name for the musicians who were playing the music. I remember buying it and I knew Prince Buster from, back then he had a couple of songs that were very big in the youth clubs, and 10 Commandments of Man and Al Capone, and they were like ska records. So when I bought it, I really didn't know what it was going to be. And it says raw, pure, true, not diluted. Jamaican rhythm expresses the feeling of the Jamaican people, which doesn't really tell us anything. Not specific. When we look on the back, it just talks about Jamaica. Come and enjoy the beaches, enjoy your stay. This guy in the back here is Big Youth, the DJ toaster, and this is Prince Buster. So we might guess that Big Youth is on it, but it might not mean anything. This is Prince Buster in his record shop. So I took the record home and put it on the turntable and listened. And the music started. Suddenly the guitar and the piano dropped out and there was just bass and drums and a sort of splash of tape echo. Then the guitar would come back in, the drums would drop out, and I was taken aback by this. I'd never heard this before. So this is dub music, and I was like, wow, what is going on here? This is incredible. It's a bit of a mysterious album. No one is sure who mixed it. Some people say it's Carlton Lee at Dynamics. Some people say it was King Tubby's. Whoever did it did a fantastic job, but it's a very, very early dub album. And it's probably still my favourite one because it's the first one I heard.